Imagine that you're working for a B2B data company. Let's say, something similar to Zoom Info or Apollo, and you're running a team of, let's say, 5 reps who are on the phones all day, probably using a parallel or a power dialer, connecting with prospects randomly, and they're supposed to be really good at handling objections on the fly, right? So that's where you are, let's say, and you're working for this company. How do you ensure that your reps are able to handle those questions and objections that your prospects raise when they're on this, auto dialing mode and they're constantly connected with random people with random questions and objections, right? You want to make sure that the knowledge gap of your reps is solid, right? And they're able to properly answer all the questions and objections raised in these calls. So in this video, we're going to talk about how to simulate the exact same scenario on Rehearse, right? So that your reps can practice instead of on your actual prospects. They can practice and rehearse in the auto dialer mode where they're randomly connected to the AI versions of the prospects that throw, the actual questions and objections that you normally have in your sales calls. And then how can you analyze them in the analytics section and see where your reps, need more coaching and where they're doing pretty well. Okay, so let's go over that quickly. Now, ideally, if you do this in your power dialer, parallel dialer, the first thing that you would normally do is upload a list of your prospects. Right, so that's exactly what we're going to do by creating buyer bots in Rehearse. So when you log into Rehearse, simply click on buyer bots and let's create a buyer bot group. This is similar to a prospect list that you would create, right? It's a buyer bot group, like a bunch of prospects in that group. So let's do this, create a group and let's call it something. Let's call it Data Viz Core Bots. Okay, I'll just remove myself here and you can also put in a description, but let's quickly create the buyer bot group. And if I click on it, you can see that it's empty, right? Let's create the buyer bots. Now, Rehearse makes it super easy to create the buyer bots in bulk, and that's what we're going to do. And then we're going to create one more buyer bot where I'm going to show you how to do that using a single buyer bot mode. So let's do this. Let's click on create a bot, and here you can see that you can create the bots in bulk. Let's click this. Next. And this is the exciting part where if I go to my notes, I've got a bunch of random some of the LinkedIn profiles that you might want to call. All I'm going to do is just copy this, right? And this can be anything. You can copy from anywhere. Go back and click this section and hit Command V or Control V if you're on a Windows. And you can see that I just pasted all the LinkedIn profile and Rehearse was able to pass them. And then all I need to do is create the bots. That's all, right? And if we wait for let's say 20 seconds, Rehearse is going to create all the bots. You can do this 30 at a time. So make sure that your the thing that you're copying is less than 30. So if we wait for some time, you'll see that Rehearse will generate all the bots. There you go. We've got all the bots. And this wasn't able to generate, so I'm just going to delete this so that my list is clean. So there you go. I've got all the buyer bots. Now, the next thing that you want to do is create assessments, right? Now, what are assessments? Assessments are things that happen at the end of every call, right? And they're also used in the calls. So for example, the first assessment that you can create is scorecards. Scorecards are evaluated at the end of every call. Let's say, did the rep use a permission-based opener? Did the rep mention the company name? Did the rep make sure in the closing that, that the prospect accepted the calendar invite? Those types of things are there in scorecards, and you can do this in sets. So let's first create these, and I'm going to tell you how to combine all these things together. So the scorecards, I'm just going to divide the scorecards into, let's say, 2 parts. One is opening, and the second one is closing. And you can go all over the place and make as many scorecard set as you want. So I'm going to do add a card, and I'm going to name it opener. Okay, let's add the card. I've got the card, and in here I'm going to do 2 things. Did the rep use a permission-based opener? And you can add an additional evaluation criteria that Rehearse is going to check it through. Let's say if you define a permission-based opener only when a rep asks for 27 seconds versus 30 seconds or any other kind of PBO, then you can define that here. So a permission-based opener is when the rep asks for 30 seconds of the prospect's time anywhere in the call. Okay, and I'm just going to add this item, and let's add one more. Did the rep mention the company name? And the company name is Data Viz. Okay, let's add it. So I've got these 2 scorecards, and I'm just going to add one more set. Close. And then in here, I'm just going to add, did the rep make sure the invite is accepted? An invite is accepted when the prospect confirms that they received the email. Okay, so what's going to happen is if we associate these scorecards to the scenario that we're going to create, Rehearse is going to evaluate these scorecards and assign it a 0 or 1, right? 1 if it happened, that is true. 0 if it never happened. The next thing that you want to do is add a bunch of objections that you normally get in your sales call. So if you're using Gong or any other sales intelligence tool, just ask it to give you a list of the top 20, 30 objections or 50 objections that you normally have. And it's usually the case that you have only, 20 or 30 possible objections. So let's actually do this. I'm just going to do an objection set. Let's do data with cold call objection set. And you can have as many sets as you'd like. I'm going to add the objection set. And then within this set, I'm going to add my objections. So I'm just going to click this plus icon, and I can add single objections if you want to, let's say, input an evaluation criteria. Or I can do this in bulk and later on put in the exact evaluation criteria. So let's say I add a single objection. The price is too high. I can put in like how you want to mark this as complete or not, right? Or I'm just going to do this in bulk. So same action. I'm going to go back. These are some of the typical sales objections that we normally get. I go back, I click here and Command V. That's all I have to do. And it will find out all the objections, and I'm just going to add this in bulk. There you go. I've got all the objections, right? And the next thing, finally, we add a bunch of questions. So let's add a question set, data with questions set. And I'm going to add the question set right here. And then within it, I'm going to add all the questions that I normally get. So let's say I've got all these questions. I'm going to go back and click Command V and paste. There you go. I've got 23 questions. I'm going to add them right here. So there you go. I've got these question sets. You can add as many sets as you'd like for different situations, different scenarios, but I have these two, and then I have scorecards. So what's going to happen is when we use these objection question sets, Rehearse is going to randomly pick between 3 to 6 questions and 3 to 6 objections for every single call that your reps make. And we'll see how to do this so that your reps get used to hearing those typical questions and objections, right? So now that we have the assessments and the buyer bots, right? So we've got all the buyer bots right here, and we've got all the assessments, scorecards, questions, objections. The final thing that you need to do is create the scenario. The scenario is what ties all these things together. It has buyer bots, it has questions, objections, and scorecards, so that the entire thing becomes a call blitz. So let's do this right here. Go back to the home page and create the scenario. And let's do this. It's pretty simple. We're going to simulate the cold call, and let's put in the scenario name. So data with main cold call. Okay, and if you have some instructions that you want to use, you can put it here. Ideally, I would not recommend putting anything right here. Just leave this empty, and let's choose cold call. If you want it to be a warm call, you can also do this, but let's do the cold call and put next. Objection sets, let's introduce the objection set that we just created, and you can have as many sets as you'd like, right? Next, question sets. Let's do the question set that we just created. Next, buyer bot groups. Again, we just created one buyer bot group. Next, finally, the role play instructions that your reps see. So book a meeting. With this prospect meeting, right? That's the goal. And finally, we're going to associate it with the 2 scorecards that we just created. Remember, opener has its own set of items, close has its own set of items, and we can associate the whole card with a bunch of items to this scenario. So I just showed you, we put in the basic details, we associated with the objection sets that we just created, question sets, buyer bot groups. Finally, we associate with scorecards, and I'm just going to create the scenario. It's as simple as that. There you go. In a second, we just created a scenario. Now remember, we have associated buyer bot groups to this scenario. So instead of selecting this, when you choose the scenario, you will see the whole thing turns into the call blitz mode. Let's do this. There you go. It turned into call blitz, right? Yeah, I'll do this again. I go back to the normal call. It's paste your LinkedIn profile. If I go here, it will turn into call blitz. Now note that if you don't associate buyer bots to a scenario, it will not turn into call blitz. It will still ask you to paste people's LinkedIn profile and create bots on the fly. But the advantage of creating the call blitz is that it's not going to spend any time doing research of the person, because it has already done that when you're creating the buyer bots. So let's actually do this. Let's start the blitz, and I will show you how that would look like. What it's doing is...
Hello?
Hey, Patrick, how are you?
Hello? Yeah, I'm trying to wrap up this data mapping project for the new Snowflake instance. What's this about?
Patrick, I was hoping you had 30 seconds to hear me out real quick.
30 seconds? Okay. Well, I've got like 5 different dashboards fighting with each other right now, so make it quick.
Perfect, Patrick. I'm calling from a company called DataWiz. Not sure if that rings a bell by any chance.
DataWiz? Nope, doesn't ring a bell. What is it?
Well, it's a B2B prospecting platform. I'm curious, like, what are you guys using right now for B2B data?
We're mostly on Salesforce and a bit of Zoom info, but honestly, the data's getting kind of stale. What's so special about DataWiz?
All right, Patrick. I will talk to you later. Goodbye. As you can see, I'm completely hands-free. It's moving on to the next person.
Hello?
Hey, Jenna, I'm calling from DataWiz. Do you have 30 seconds to hear me out real quick?
Yeah, hey. I'm actually trying to get this board set up for a new user flow, and it's being a pain. What's up?
Yeah, as I said, I'm calling from a company called DataWiz. We are a B2B data prospecting platform. Not sure if, that's a priority right now for you guys.
DataWiz, okay. Right, so what exactly are you hoping to help us out with? Are you trying to sell me some kind of like super-powered lead list or something?
All right, Jenna, goodbye.
Bye.
There you go. As soon as they hang up, it will begin to dial the next prospect. right? Again, I'm totally hands-free.
Hello?
Hey, Patrick, this is Dev calling from DataWiz. How are you?
Yeah, hey. Look, I'm staring at like 15 goddamn dashboards right now trying to figure out why our East Coast pipeline is suddenly drier than the Sahara. What's this about? Quick?
And I'm just going to end the call blitz, and you'll see we are back to, here. So that was how you create this call blitz and scenario. I hope that you found this extremely exciting and simple. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes to set this up for your team. And of course, if you need any help, you can always book a call with me, and I would love to show you how this whole thing works. Now, once your reps are dialing and talking to people, what Rehearse is doing in the back end is analyzing all the calls, and you can see the analysis in two sections, two places. First one is call logs. So if I go to the call logs, you can see that it's loading, and you can see I just spoke with Patrick and Jenna, and you see that it is evaluating all these scorecards. For example, this is 33%, because if I go to the scorecard, you will see that all I did was just mention the company name, and if I expand this, the rep did not ask for 30 seconds, so this is not evaluated as true. So it will essentially rate the call based on the number of scorecards that were evaluated, and it's also going to tell you the reason why these scorecards were evaluated the way they were. So you can see the scores of these calls. If I go back to here, you can see that I did ask for 30 seconds, and I did mention the company name, which is DataWiz, so it's going to tell you that, yeah, this happened in the call. And based on that, it's going to assign a score of 67%, which is 2 in 3. The second thing is questions and objections. These were the questions and objections that were picked randomly from the question set that you associated in the scenario, right? And you can see that none of these questions occurred because I cut the call short to just show you guys how the thing looks like. But usually, at least 50 to 60% of these questions, if they fit the conversation, will happen. And based on that, it's also going to evaluate the call. And finally, at the end, you can see all the stats, which is the typical stuff for the call, like talk to listen ratio, reps total talk time, prospects talk time, filler words, etc. Right? So you can see that for individual calls. You can also download calls or hear them back, share them on Slack, etc. That's also possible. And also, of course, the transcript of the call. Right? Now, the second thing, which is more exciting, where you can actually see how your reps are doing and where the knowledge gaps are, is in the analytics section. So the analytics section essentially shows you the overall performance of your reps in aggregate. So you can choose, let's say, a scenario. Let's say, DataWiz. That's the scenario, right? How many calls were there? 3. What's the average call duration? 46. What's the meeting book rate, etc. You can see all that. You can also see the average score of the calls. Now, if your scorecards are normally, fairly complex, so if that's complex, this will reflect how your reps are doing even better. And you can also see, if you toggle this, you can also see the activities, which is the number of calls they made and the number of meetings they booked out of those calls, right? So you can see all this in aggregate, and you can also see this for specific scenarios, and you can also choose a specific member of your team, like for example, myself, and see it for a specific scenario and for a specific rep between a certain time frame, right? So that's the aggregate analytics. The next thing, which is the final piece of the puzzle, is the knowledge gaps. So let me actually go there. Right? And here, this is where it gets super exciting, where it shows you how many times a certain objection occurred in the calls versus how many times it was handled by your reps, right? Which is extremely exciting, right? You can see these are the two objections did occur, and I wasn't able to handle them. And the same thing's true with the questions, and the same thing is true with the talk track adherence. So you can see, like, okay, did the rep use a permission-based opener? Yeah, I did use a PBO in all the calls. Did I mention the company name? Yes, I did mention the company name in all the calls, right? So here you can track the knowledge gap. Now, for example, let's say, if I go back and just choose all members and choose all scenarios, right? Ideally, what you would see is you would see all the objections once your reps are practicing and using the tool a lot, and you will see the actual knowledge gaps. You will see that, okay, yeah, this is one question that has occurred in like 100 calls, and they were able to, your rep was able to answer it only in 50 calls or 30 calls. That's a big knowledge gap. Versus if a question set occurred in like 100 calls and your reps were able to answer it 90% of the time, that's good. You don't have to worry about it. So you will clearly be able to see where the gaps are, the largest gap, and then coach your reps. For example, if this gap would have been, this green thing was here and this yellow thing was here, that means it occurred like, these number of times, and it was only handled like this number of times. That's a massive gap. That's where you need to focus on. So with this, I hope that, it was clear. In under 20 minutes, we were able to set up the call blitz scenario with your reps. And in the next couple of videos, I'm going to tell you how do you, how do you do the workspace thing, how do you, dial individual people, and how to invite your team members, and plans and pricing. But this was the largest tutorial because it's the longest, thing that you can do in Rehearse, and it still takes like 5 to 10 minutes if you're doing it and if you know what you're doing. So yeah, if you want to book a call with me, feel free to, book a time, and I would see you in the next video.